I was 33, that I was just going to die and that life didn't matter because I was cursed with bad genes.
Doug Evans is a natural foods entrepreneur and author of the Sprout book, where he teaches how to grow ultra-nutritious food right on your kitchen counter, in days, not weeks. He co-founded Organic Avenue, a trailblazer in the cold-pressed juice movement, and later founded Juicero, bringing fresh-pressed nutrition into homes nationwide. Doug is on a mission that's both simple and revolutionary to champion sprouting as the most affordable, accessible, and impactful daily nutrition practice. Now, when we talk about sprouts, like nutritionally, how are they different from everyday salad?
So inside the seed, you have an embryo and an endosperm. So it's highly, highly concentrated, which makes the sprouts up to 100 times more nutritious. I used food as a reward system because the food was engineered to trigger the release of dopamine in the brain. So I went from eating anything to vegetarian, which was the first step, vegan, and then raw vegan 26 years ago.
The more you know, the more the unknown grows. I am Jitesh Vaswani, your host, and together, let's take this journey beyond the known. Doug, welcome to Beyond the Known.
Oh, thank you so much for having me.
Of course.
I'm here because this is my mission, right? And at some point, I hope everyone who watches this podcast or listens to it finds something that they're so excited about that they'll get up at 5 a.m, do their practices and their ritual, and drive 5 hours, for an hour session, right?
Yeah. Well, I'm glad that you said that. I'm sure that our listeners will find a lot of value out of this podcast and also derive inspiration from your life's mission. So, Doug, how did this all start? Right? I want to go back to the early days. How did you get into juicing, first of all, and utilizing and understanding the nutritional value and the gift that nature has given us in the form of fruits, vegetables? How did this, start?
So I grew up poor in New York City, and my father, may he rest in peace, was a non-meditator, untreated combat World War II veteran. And today, if he was diagnosed, they probably would have said PTSD or bipolar. And then, we used terms half jokingly like shell-shocked. And so he was the sweetest man in the world until he wasn't.
I'm sorry.
And it made it so unsafe to be in the household that it was safer for me to be in the streets and on the subway trains, and didn't have access to food. So being able to cobble together a few dollars to buy fast food was a luxury. And so as we continued to grow and get older, I was getting overweight, lethargic, and just sloppy. But I used food as a reward system because the food was engineered to trigger the release of dopamine in the brain. And so I didn't think anything of what I ate. I ate anything, meat, chicken, fish, dairy, animal products, fast food, processed food, candy. I wouldn't say I just had a sweet tooth. I just loved eating. And then in 1999, my aunt was developed type 2 diabetes. And they did a double amputation of her feet below her ankles. And then my mother, may she rest in peace, developed stomach cancer. We thought it was an ulcer. She went into the hospital. She never came out.
Wow. Sorry to hear that.
Before I could finish grieving the loss of my mother, my father died of heart disease. And then my brother, who was just 2 years older than me, 35 years old, had the first of 3 strokes and 2 heart attacks. So I thought I was 33 that I was genetically cursed, that I was just going to die, and that life didn't matter, nothing mattered because I was cursed with bad genes. And as I learned that it wasn't my genes, it was my lifestyle. And a woman who I met in New York City looked me in the eye and told me that I was living a toxic, carcinogenic, diabetic lifestyle that was going to kill me. But if I changed my life and I changed my lifestyle and I changed my diet, that everything would change. And she couldn't have been more correct. And within a 2-week period, for this audience, I'm very happy and very proud to live an ahimsa lifestyle, to be vegan for 26 years. And it seems like when you tell people outside of this community that you're vegan, it brings on for them the awareness that they're not vegan, that they're killing animals or having animals killed for their behalf, non-peaceful lifestyle, very violent lifestyle. But in this world, so I went from eating anything to vegetarian, which was the first step, vegan, and then raw vegan 26 years ago.
Wow.
And it was all initially for me because of health. Like I just thought like, hey, that was the healthy way to eat fresh, ripe, raw fruits, vegetables, seeds, nuts, seaweeds, algae, and sprouts. Like I thought, wow, like if you actually can eat things that you can look at and identify what they are, where they came from, whether they're fresh or not, like that would be an incredible privilege to do. And I literally registered a domain, to track things back 26 years ago. And so every day, like I made an effort of like, how was I going to do it? How can I do it just for today? Can I be plant-based? Can I be raw? Can I eat my fruits and vegetables? And I saw sprouts the first time in New York City at the farmer's market. And when I tuned into them, I had this awareness that they were alive, right? That they were living foods, water-based, enzymatically active, and they were still growing, like they were still alive. And if you look at what's in the grocery store, 98, 99% of what's sold is in a bag or a box or a can or a jar, and it's been cooked and refined and pasteurized and denatured with additives and preservatives. And sprouts it's like the essence of life. It's a simple, single ingredient. So there's a war against ultra-processed food. Sprouts are unprocessed.
Yes.
Right? They're just a simple food. So in the back of my mind, for decades, I knew about sprouts, but I relegated them into the corner of a superfood, of a garnish, or as something that you could add as a side dish.
Okay.
And then, my journey up, down, all around landed me in a little town called Wonder Valley near Joshua Tree. And I'm living on a hot spring. So I live at Wonder Valley Hot Springs. And I'm living in a tent, and I have the hot spring, and I'm staring at the universe. And life is perfect. Like I'm tuned in to this abundance consciousness. And I'm so grateful. I'm feeling like the gratitude of my breath, of my body, of my ancestors, of the surrounding beauty. And I had one little issue, which was, what was I going to eat?
Yeah.
Because Joshua Tree, the next town over, is not only an environmental desert, it's a food desert.
Oh, really?
So there was no health food stores, no farmers markets, no restaurants. Forget about plant-based restaurants, no restaurants. So I literally, I tuned in and I asked the universe, how can I live in this beautiful part of nature in peace where I've never heard a horn, right? I'm so far away from civilization, but I'm so close, right? I could drive here in a half a day.
Right.
And the universe was so clear that, Doug, you know how to sprout. And within 1 cubic foot, with 6 jars, I started to grow sprouts, alfalfa, radish, clover, broccoli, lentils, peas, mung beans. And within those 6 jars, I was growing thousands of calories a day.
Wow.
Of plant-based nutrition. And this was like, whoa, like I couldn't believe it. Like I'm pinching myself because now my problem was solved, right? I owned my land, right? And now I had a food source for under $1 a day. And sprouts are a total miracle. that you can grow the sprouts without soil, without sunshine,
With just water.
without fertilizer
Yeah.
in days,
Yep.
and you get an entire crop where 35 grams of seeds turns into 350 grams of sprouts in 5 days.
Wow.
So you get exponential growth. So at some point, because I'm in the desert, I'm away from all people, like I thought, maybe I'm dreaming. Like maybe I'm dreaming this, because this is too good to be true. It tasted good. It tasted fresh. And when I talk about fresh, the average produce in the United States is traveling 2,000 miles across the country. And here, I was growing and eating my produce the same day. So instead of 2,000 miles, it was 2 feet.
Right.
So I decided, like, I need to do some research. And this is before AI, before ChatGPT. So I call up Dr. Joel Furman, Dr. Dean Ornish, Dr. Mark Hyman, Dr. Josh Axe, Dr. Joel Kahn. And some of these doctors were plant-based, right? Some were functional medicine.
Right.
And some were, Dr. Axe wrote the keto book.
Right.
So these were not, like, I wasn't talking to the choir.
Right.
I was going out to people who had a very strong foundation of nutrition. And I thought the common goal that they had was that they wanted to help people, right? But their other common thread that went across all of them is they all loved sprouts. And for a second, I dropped into scarcity. And I thought, like, oh my God, they're gonna run with this. And then I realized, no, we're in an abundant universe. That this information, I didn't discover anything. I rediscovered nature's first law, nature's first secret was about plants. And a seed is a complete living organism in a dormant state.
Right.
Right?
Right.
And if you add water, you trigger a germination process. And as the seed is going through that metamorphosis from seed into vegetable, it's sequestering carbon, releasing oxygen, and it's acquiring more physical atoms and molecules as it's growing. And this is just something that in many cultures, in India, in Japan, in China, in Korea, sprouting, they know about sprouting,
Yep.
right?
We used to grow up with sprouting. Like my grandma, this was our breakfast for a long period of time when she would sprout mung beans. And that was my breakfast, along with some lime, lemon, and some flavoring with some spices. And it tastes great.
Right. So, but in the US, which is amalgamation of people coming from all over the world,
Right.
Predominantly to get sick, right? they think they're coming for the American dream,
Yeah.
right? But they're also coming to get sick.
Yeah.
Because when they adopt the American lifestyle, the standard American diet, they become overweight, obese, diabetic, heart disease, cancer, and all these preventable and reversible chronic illnesses. So I was aware of the chronic illnesses, and I also made a decision that I was going to raise my standard of what I was willing to consume, because this body, I realized, was a gift.
Right.
And that it was my responsibility to nurture this body as a gift. So everything that goes in my mouth is a prayer, is a sacrament, and it's something that I take very seriously. So what I did was I incrementally raised my standards from lettuce to iceberg lettuce to romaine lettuce and to now, broccoli sprouts. So I just raised the standard. And then, I reached out
Yeah.
to these guys and I said, hey, look, I want to write a book because there was never, right? Imagine 2017, there was never a book on sprouting
sprouts.
by a major publisher, that got any mainstream thing. So I called the doctors, I networked, and it's interesting. When you make a decision that you're going to do something, the whole world comes to your aid.
Right.
Right? So all of a sudden, doors started to open, and next thing I know, I'm in New York City. I have an appointment with one of the largest publishers in the world. And like I could have just showed up, like I know how to speak, but instead I treated that meeting as a meeting that would change the world. So I prepared for that meeting, and I realized like, okay, I want to sell the book. I want to do this book. What should the book be like? So it was why sprouts, how to sprouts, what to do with the sprouts. And I realized that we're talking about food, so I wanted to create recipes. I'm not a chef, right? But there are chefs there. So I was introduced to the woman who did Oprah's recipe book, and she developed all the recipes for there. And I called her up. I said, look, I'm doing a book. I want it to be on sprouts. I want it to be all plant-based, and I want to do 40 recipes. And my criteria is that they're all plant-based and that 50% of the ingredients in every recipe are sprouts. And she literally was like, what are you, crazy? Like, sprouts are a little garnish or side dish. How do you get it up to 50%?
Yeah.
And I said, I'll work with you. I know a lot about sprouts.
Yeah.
So we worked on the recipes. And then she introduced me to a chef in New York City to make the recipes. So I show up in New York City with all of these recipes. I lay out a silver platter, and the editor was eating the sprouts out of the palm of my hand.
Wow. Wow. Are those recipes in the book too?
They're in the book.
Okay, that's great. So, you mentioned something very interesting as part of your journey. You said you went from eating anything to first vegetarian to vegan and then to raw vegan.
Yes.
Right? So why raw?
I mean, if you think about it, it's so obvious that when you apply fire to anything, you don't get more of it. You get less of it. So when you cook something, the first thing that goes is the water molecules, and our body is mostly water, right? The vitamin C's and the fiber, they all get denatured. So you think about when people are using fire, they're using it to eat things predominantly to kill bacteria, right? If you don't eat, like if you're a true carnivore and you're, killing a gazelle in the fields, you're eating the entire thing, right? And then you pass out, they go to sleep. But if you were to leave the food around, the microbial activity, the parasites, it's just unsafe.
Right.
So cooking was a method of making the unsafe items more safe in the direct and immediate function.
Interesting. I've never thought of cooking like that, actually. I've never thought of why we cook food on a flame.
Well, other reasons, you cook them is basically makes it easier to eat.
Yeah, it's easier to eat, easier to digest.
Easier to eat.
Yeah.
But what happens is you're totally changing the whole metabolic format of the food.
Okay.
So to me, when you're eating clean, fresh, raw food, right, fruits and vegetables, seeds, nuts, seaweeds, you don't need to cook them. Like they're fresh.
Yeah.
Right? If you let them rot and you don't want to eat mold and bacteria, you can cook them. But if you're eating fresh, it's a whole different level. And then the fact that they're alive with enzymatically active and they're water-based and they have high concentrations. Like on a typical nutrition label, it has fat, sugar, salt, carbohydrates, calories. They're not tracking the 150,000 phytochemicals, antioxidants that exist in the food. And the reason why they're not on the label is because they don't exist in the food. They've been totally like washed away, cooked away, processed. So if you think about what do I want to eat, like I'm worthy of consuming fresh. And in my journey of my first two companies in the health space, Organic Avenues, everything was fresh. We had 12 stores in New York City where everything was made from fresh fruits, vegetables, etc.
Right.
But there was a huge encumbrance if you want to deal with fresh because it's a short shelf life. It's mostly water weight, requires refrigeration and the like, and packaging. So if you think about something that's clean, where you can have sovereignty. If I can send you seeds and you can add water and you can grow the food in glass and in stainless steel, like we know we're getting things that are safe. We know where they're coming from.
Yeah.
We know when they were planted and when they were harvested.
Yeah.
Like this is just a whole new level. And when I did my podcast with Marianne Williamson, we talked about food equality and food justice. It's so rare that I can't even think of another example, right, other than meditation, where the quality of the information, the content, the nutrition is so high and the cost
It's so low.
is so low.
Yeah.
Right? Because normally if something is low cost, it's low quality.
Right.
Right? In this case, the sprouts are the highest quality, they're the lowest cost. It's a paradox in this civilization. And when I asked John Mackey, the founder of Whole Foods, why isn't everyone sprouting?
Yeah.
And he's like, oh, sprouts are a terrible business. I said, what do you mean?
Why? Yeah.
Short shelf life, low margins, they require refrigerated transportation, plastic packaging, and as a result, there are no national or international sprouting companies.
Yeah.
And I was like, oh, that's so interesting. Like, in frozen vegetables, you have Green Diet, Green Giant. In pineapples, you have Dole, right? You have Organic Girl salad mix and the like. But there is no brand
Which is
of sprouts.
Yeah.
Right? So for the most part, sprouts are not sold, right? Whole Foods may sell 25,000 SKUs. At most, they'll have 4 or 8 sprouts. It's not even a rounding error.
Yeah. Yeah.
So what I realized is that in America, it's a very capitalistic driven society. Americans and people living in America, people living around the world, everyone is smarter than you think they are.
Yeah.
Right? People are smarter. And if people knew, then they would run with this information. And that's what's happened as I think we've triggered a global revolution. And we talk about mainstream, right? So I was living in Mysore, India. I did 2 10-day Vipassana meditations, one in Tamil Nadu, one in Northern California. And I'm like in a little bubble of my own equanimity, right? Unfazed by what's going on in the outside world, not watching TV, not consuming media. And my life was perfect, right? And I didn't have to work, so I'm living a very simple life. And when I discovered this information, it literally came through me that this information needed to be shared with the world. Like this needed to go out there because we have 100 million people in America that are overweight or diabetic or pre-diabetic. We have 200 million people that are overweight or obese. I mean, it's the numbers are incalculable. And when someone makes a decision that they're going to change their life, they're going to get healthy, and they start to eat sprouts, the world changes for them.
That's great. And I agree. Like sprouts, in Hindi, in India, there's a saying. First of all, it says, Jaisa an, vaisa man. It means your mind is a reflection of the food and the diet and the nutrition that you consume. So if you look at a person and they're behaving erratically, and they would ask the first question is like, oh, what did you have for lunch, right? And the same way if somebody is behaving very nicely, like, what do you eat? If they become successful, they're like, oh, what do you eat? What are you eating? So it's tied into our culture is diet and the mind are very much correlated with each other.
Yeah.
Right?
Like, to me, I was in the military, the U.S. military. I was in the 82nd Airborne when I was a little kid, 17 years old. Now, like to me, like I really make the connection. If our world leaders were vegan, were vegetarian even, we would not have wars.
Because they're so peaceful, right?
They're so peaceful. And, you look at the example that Gandhi had, in the late 1940s of peaceful resistance, right? That all these wars are because I think are tied to both religious fanaticism and diet, right?
Diet is a major part of it.
So if someone, like to me, today, like I couldn't be in the army. Like no one's going to tell me, oh, go shoot these people under no circumstances. So I think if our leaders were eating more plants, if they were eating sprouts, if they were meditating and they could see, beyond the immediate fear-based scarcity, and they thought about just the abundance of unconditional love and connection, there'd be no wars, right? I mean, there's so much going on in the world, and somehow there's enough food to feed 80 billion farm animals, but not enough food to feed 8 billion humans.
Hey, a quick pause. If you're listening to this and thinking, I need more peace in my day, more clarity in my mind, then I'll really encourage you to check out The Art of Living. The Art of Living offers a technique called Sky Breath Meditation, used by CEOs, pro athletes, and high performers around the world to recharge their energy, clear that mental fog, and reset the nervous system in minutes. They offer programs both online and in person. It is science-backed and it works. Head to artofliving.org to learn more.
We have today, I just spoke in Dubai at the largest global food expo called Gulf Food in Dubai. And I spoke after the head of food security from the World Bank. And, they've got huge budgets, $25, $35 billion. And when she talks about what's happening in food scarcity, 25,000 people a day are dying of starvation. 25,000 a day.
Wow.
10 million.
And this is all over the world or just in the U.S.?
All over the world.
Oh, wow.
Yeah, all over the world. The U.S., basically has very little death. We have people who are nutritionally deficient.
Yes.
But we don't have a lot of...
Probably more people dying here because of overeat. Like they're obese, they're overweight.
You took away my punchline, right? If we have 25,000 people a day globally dying from food scarcity and nutrition deficiency, but we have 100,000 dying from chronic illnesses from associated with overeating the wrong foods.
Yeah. And then so for example, now when we talk about sprouts, like nutritionally, how are they different from, let's say, everyday salad or like the other greens that you get in like Whole Foods or Sprouts?
Yeah. So all greens, for the most part, I think are healthy.
Okay. Yeah.
The difference between the sprouts is that the seeds, when you start to germinate them and you sprout them, you're releasing the meristematic stem cells of the plants.
Okay.
So it has the full potential of what this needs to go through. So inside the seed, you have an embryo and an endosperm. So it's highly, highly concentrated, which makes the sprouts up to 100 times more nutritious than the mature vegetables sold in the supermarket.
Wow. So when you say 100 times more nutritious, like what nutrition?
Well, for example, these phytochemicals, for example, like the brassica family, broccoli, cauliflower, kale, they're very well known for their anti-cancer properties, and broccoli is considered very nutritious. Turns out the broccoli seed contains the precursor to sulforaphane. All the brassica family are different isothiocyanates and different glucosinolates. And so, for example, radish contains glucoraphanin. Broccoli contains glucoraphanin. There's a finite amount in every seed. And as the seed grows into a sprout and a microgreen and mature vegetable, the amount of that glucoraphanin or glucoraphanin actually gets diluted at every stage. So as the plant is developing, it's obviously accumulating more water, it's getting more dietary fiber, soluble and insoluble fiber. But these finite phytochemicals, they're there, they're issued. So the reason why we're not eating broccoli seeds and we're eating broccoli sprouts is because the seed contains enzyme inhibitors, it has phytic acid, it has lectins, and it has all part of its protective coating to be able to keep that living organism alive in this dormant state. But when you add water, you're triggering this metabolic process, this transformation, which is like a moth or a caterpillar
Yeah.
turning into a butterfly.
Yeah.
You wouldn't even recognize this. And it's part of the circle of life.
Yeah.
Like, during COVID, we were at Wonder Valley Hot Springs. People were fighting over toilet paper. We used a bidet. People were fighting over macaroni and cheese and Coca-Cola, and we're sprouting,
Yeah.
right? So we had hundreds of pounds of sprouting seed, and we were just like, didn't have a worry in the world. And I think when you think about the abundance of a seed, right? And you look at a seed, an acorn is a seed, by the way. You plant an acorn, it grows into an oak tree. That single oak tree can produce 10,000 more acorns every season, every year.
Yeah.
So and every acorn can then reproduce itself more and more and more.
Yeah.
So there's more than enough to go around. But if people want to have things where they're eating for pleasure, not for nutrition, not for the animals, not for health, you can see it. You're in good, healthy shape. So you can see when someone's not healthy, it's a scary, expensive, painful process to be around people that are not, they're not healthy.
Yeah.
And so when I strive, one of the things that's hard for me is to tune into empathy. It's hard because I'm so used to being in survival mode that I really have to take time and tune in. So a lot of times our judgment, when we see people that are sick, that are overweight, we judge them as fat or lazy or shame them. And the reality is they are a product of our institutions, of our environment, of our politics.
Exactly.
And, we're subsidizing high fructose corn syrup and corn and soy to make, animal products that are just antithetical. And as a result, people are just getting sick. Some people are getting rich and some people are getting sick and more people are getting sick. And some people are getting rich, and it's a spiral. But when you tune in and you say, enough's enough.
Yeah.
I want to feel good. I want to tune in to abundance. I want to tune into health. I want to feel good. I'm going to be 60 years old, and I am in the best physical, mental, spiritual stage of my entire life.
That's great.
That's how I feel. And I know other people, that are a year younger than me, 40 years younger than me, and they don't love life.
Interesting. So now, for anybody who's listening to this, I'm sure now they're getting excited about, okay, this is great. Now, how do I do it myself? Do you have tips about how to germinate your own sprouts at home?
So
how do
if you
it?
live in the United States, I started the sprouting company with a few of my friends because there had been no innovations in sprouting for hundreds of years. People were using a cheesecloth, a rubber band, and a mason jar, and wasn't sanitary, didn't have the results. They're using iPad stands to hold them erect. And I decided to take my knowledge of manufacturing, of engineering, of science and nutrition to design a product just for sprouting. So when we started the sprouting company, we spent 5 years of designing and researching so we could create something that would be just high quality, high optimum airflow, air exchange, drainage. And so we created a generation sprouting kit.
Okay.
And then the seeds are ubiquitous. You can get seeds anywhere around the world.
Right.
But turns out that the longer the seeds are away from the plant and the origin, it affects germination, it could affect quality. So I wanted to make sure, and again, set a standard of getting the highest quality seeds, tested for germination rate, certified organic, and tested on a batch by batch basis for pathogens so they would be healthy in the environment for people to go. So I wanted to have something that I knew that, because I've gotten seeds and they didn't germinate. And that's not, you're going through this whole process,
and then there's some seeds
and you don't get the end game.
Yeah.
And then so I started the sprouting company.
Yeah.
And I wasn't thinking about, anything more than hey, I think this would be a fun project. I'm really curious, can you design a better sprouter, a better
Right.
kit? Can you get better seeds? And then, in my mid-50s, I decided to go on to social media.
Yeah.
And from a level of just sharing goodness. Like I wanted to make sure that anything that I shared wasn't about trying to impress someone, on a private jet or a beach or a life that I wasn't living. I wanted to tune into pure authenticity of what it's like to be able to eat plants, what to do with the plants, and how to live like a simple, life of and no longer worry about food. And I would say, there's a dividing line of people that are eating to live, right? Because you need nutrition to live, or they're living to eat. And they're fantasizing, like instead of being able to be fully present in a conversation, in their mind, they're like, what am I going to eat? When am I going to eat? What time's the food? When are they going? And it's almost like they're animals in the zoo and they're trained for this very regimented, and I would argue unhealthy, 3 meals a day plus 2 snacks, X, Y, and Z, and food plates and food pyramids and all that. I think that if you ask someone, and I've tuned into people, like I'll go out and see someone eating a pizza and I'll put sprouts on their pizza and I'll put sprouts on their Big Mac because I want to increase their nutrition.
Yeah.
These people who you'd think know nothing, they know.
Yeah. So then why are they still choosing to still eat unhealthy, let's say? Is it because of how the food has been genetically modified here? It's just they get a dopamine spike every time they eat something and they just want to keep doing that. People know what's right and what's wrong for them.
Yeah.
Right? So,
I think what happens is there's a level of agency and sovereignty that for the most part, people feel really helpless. Like they're working in jobs they don't like. They're in relationships that they don't like. They have kids that don't listen to them. They have parents that argue with them. So for the most part, what someone eats is a little bit of exertion of control.
Yeah.
Right? I get to eat this. And when they're eating it, it feels good.
Yeah.
Right? And people would rather feel good in that moment, even if they know, like I've watched people eat a pint or 2 pints of ice cream until they're nauseous and ready to throw up. And right before they're throwing up, they're trying to finish that last bite of the ice cream.
Yeah.
So then it's the other thing. It's not the genetically modification of the food. It's the problem. It's the food engineers know exactly how to use fat, sugar, and salt to control the brain to make the food highly, highly addictive. So if you think about the restaurants, the food, the subsidies, the distribution, that people like are opting for instant gratification, which is why, like the average, 50% of teenagers are watching pornography. Now, they know like pornography is not good for them, right? But it's so instant, right? So it's so instant that when it comes to diet and nutrition, someone usually, unfortunately, doesn't change their lifestyle until after it's almost too late. And even now, like people will have a heart attack and their first meal after a heart attack is a hamburger. Even though like they probably know that the hamburger was the cause of the heart attack, right? That meat, that clogging of the arteries. And they just, they just don't know. So I'm not a fatalist. Like I believe everyone has free choice.
Yeah.
And for me, like I believe more in attraction, not promotion. So I want to tell my story. I want to attract people.
Right.
And now, with my little following and I see the influence and, my goal is to influence the influencers and to do this and to let people know that sprouts are the most nutrient-dense food on the planet.
Right.
And when someone eats sprouts, they're getting high levels of nutrition, low levels of fat, low levels of calorie, high levels of fiber. And fiber is what feeds the microbiome.
That's true.
So it's really in the past, like you want to go to an expensive plant-based restaurant, it's expensive, right? You want to have a super nutritious plant-based meal at home, you can take your lentil sprouts and your mung bean sprouts and your alfalfa sprouts and your broccoli sprouts and get some tahini and get some sauerkraut and make a big salad, add some seaweed, and you can have a party and you will get everything that you need. Every single sprout contains every amino acid to form complete protein.
Wow. So from between the different seeds also? Like, so whether it's mung beans, whether it's alfalfa?
Every single one.
Do you have like a top 3 list of which sprouts are the best and for what reasons?
I believe in variety.
Yeah.
Like I think you need microbiome diversity.
Right.
So there are certain seeds that have been studied more so than others. Like Dr. Jed Fahey has been studying broccoli sprouts for 30 years. And I'm seeing Jed on Friday. We're recording a science-based podcast together. So broccoli sprouts, because of Johns Hopkins and because of Jed Fahey, has had, tens of millions of dollars poured into their research. So, but if you look at every sprout, as I work diligently in writing my book pre-AI, when I was doing the book, every single sprout had unique characteristics and different items. So my suggestion is, if you're starting out, mung beans, very easy. Lentils are easy. Alfalfa sprouts are easy. We make, the sprouting company has a salad mix, which is a good blend. But as you get into it, you'll start to develop your affinity. To me, we replaced protein powders in our house by adding lentils and mung beans, for the smoothies.
Wow.
Right? We replaced rice.
So the mung beans for the smooth, like they taste good?
Of course.
Wow.
Of course. What happens if you're making a smoothie and you're putting some berries in there,
Right.
you're putting some banana and you're putting some cacao, as opposed to adding a scoop of protein powder that will make you want to choke, you could put a handful of sprouts. So a handful of sprouted legumes can be 20 grams of protein.
Wow. That's incredible. Can somebody do sprouting wrong? Like, you know what I'm saying? Like, can they get it? What are some common mistakes that you see when people are sprouting?
I mean, look, that would be like, what's a common mistake of someone driving?
Yeah.
Right? You drive off the road, you go through a stop sign, you don't step on the gas, you don't put gas in the thing. Like we created, and this is a kind of a gift to the universe, a free app of how to sprout.
Okay.
Right? Because, so many of our customers are on iPhones and they want to sprout.
Right.
So we created a free app. But I think the main mistakes are people don't follow instructions.
Yeah.
Right? Like sprouting is you soak the seeds overnight, you rinse them twice a day, you strain out excess water, and you harvest on day 5. Right? But if someone decides like they're not going to rinse the sprouts twice a day, they're not going to germinate. But if someone follows the instructions, sprouting is very, very easy.
Are there like any concerns of like mold overgrowing when you're keeping the environment so humid around the sprouts to make it germinate?
No.
Okay.
I think that because sprouts are this like organic part of nature and there's been no money behind it, that sprouts get vilified. And so like from a food safety perspective, you're twice as likely to get sick from eating lettuce than you are from sprouts. And you are 8 times to 10 times more likely to get sick from eating meat, chicken, fish, or dairy than sprouts. But all of those industries, from the lettuce to the meat, chicken, fish, they all have lobbyists, they all have marketing, they all have PR. There's no one defending the sprouts. No one is being the sprout champion.
Well, until now.
That's right.
Yeah.
That's right.
That's great. Okay. Now, Doug, walk us through your day. Like, so when you wake up in the morning, what does a typical breakfast look like for you? What does a typical lunch look like for you? What does a typical dinner look like for you? Or if at all you believe in this 3 meals kind of a
so I don't believe in the 3 meals.
Yeah, okay.
I like a long fasting period.
Okay.
So my last meal is about 6 p.m.
Okay.
I break my fast around noon with whatever fresh fruit is available. And I'll usually do 1 fruit.
Okay.
And I'll eat mono fruit. And I'll have that. So nothing in the morning at all. Then I'll have a fruit. and then maybe another fruit at 2 or 3 o'clock in the afternoon. And then 5 o'clock to 6 o'clock, I start feasting on sprouts.
Uh-huh. And like different recipes or?
Yeah, I mean, it depends if I'm alone, if I'm with my family,
Yeah.
or if I'm entertaining. Like if you look, we'll make an entire sprout tisserie board where we'll take a whole board, we'll lay out all the sprouts, and we fill up the entire table with sprouts, and we put out tongs, and people grab the different things, and they make a table, they make a big plate of that. That's how we entertain, because I want people to tune in to the color, to the texture, to the vibrancy, to the size, and the beauty of the plants. So I really believe beauty is very inspirational. So we make that. For my own self, I'll eat the sprouts right out of the jar.
Yeah.
I'll eat 2 or 3 jars of sprouts and I'm done. If I'm eating with the family, with my wife, and I have a 3-year-old daughter, we'll sit and we'll make different things, and she'll make a nice dressing, and I like seaweed and various parts. But I have found that the bulk of my calories come from sprouts. And I also, if there's in-season fruit, I like that. If there's no in-season fruit, I'll eat sprouts.
From your experience, both with Organic
Avenue
and Juicero.
Yeah.
And so what lessons are you utilizing from building those 2 companies to now the sprouting company? And how are you, I noticed a big difference, right? Like where Juicero got a lot of like flack online because it was aimed at like tech people. And now this is more like sprouts seems to be something that is easily available, accessible to everybody, right? Like what is your take on
I think the main lesson for me from a business person was dealing with fresh produce was a huge encumbrance. Like the flack that Juicero got was less from the tech, but more the business media. Couldn't understand why, Silicon Valley was funding, green juice. Like it these people are smoking cigarettes and drinking coffee, so they couldn't, they couldn't understand that. So what people don't understand, they are prejudiced against. So for me, that's what happened. The product was good, people loved it, but what I realized is now sprout juice was a premium product.
Right.
And if you were to buy a cold pressed juice in the juice bar, it was $7. You bought an individual serving from Juicero, it was $7. Now Juicero was a much fresher, better product and experience and convenient, but it was still the same price. If you were to buy sprouts in the supermarket at $3 or $4, $5 a serving, it's much more expensive than when you're making a serving of sprouts for 20 or 30 cents.
Right.
So I think the difference is, for one, I wanted to have something that was much more affordable and that had economic advantage to the consumer. And that's like the metaphor. If you want furniture, like this chair looks like it's a professional chair made by a real company, probably ordered online, delivered, fully assembled, nice high quality chair, mahogany, etc. If someone doesn't want to spend $300 for a chair, they can go to IKEA.
Yeah.
And IKEA they'll pick it up at IKEA. It'll probably be $70, not $300. And they'll have to get home and get on their knees and assemble it and screw in the cushion and assemble the different parts. And I think they'll get real value. So I think by partnering with the consumer and providing information, education, equipment, nutrition, people can do it on their own and they can get huge savings.
Lovely. And I can sense the passion in your voice as you're talking about sprouts, and I'm sure that our listeners are catching to that. How do they start right away? Like, what's the first step? What should they do right now as they're listening to it? Once somebody gets inspired, they buy the seeds, start sprouting?
If they're in the US or Canada, I'd go to thesproutingcompany.com.
Okay.
Get a kit, sign up for the email list, watch a free video, listen to podcasts. My book is practically free. It's $20. I never went to college. So for me to have written a book that was 288 pages, close to 60,000 words, was an incredible it was a miracle to me.
Right.
I remember that in order for me to write the book, I had to establish a guideline operating system for myself that I would get up, I'd do my daily practices, I'd do my run, then I'd go and I'd sit, and I wouldn't get up until I wrote 500 words
Wow.
every day. And that's the way I wrote the book. Because if I didn't do that, the book never would have been done.
Wow.
Because I procrastinated initially, and then my editor is like, Doug, where's the book? And I'm like, because it didn't come natural. But then once I got into that groove and I had those parameters, it was easy. So my days, I get up, we co-sleep as a family. I get up while my wife and daughter are still sleeping. So I'm getting up at 5. I go outside, I do my practice, I do my run, and I go through it. And then when the baby wakes up, she's now 3, so she'd say, don't call me, I'm not a baby, right? But when she gets up, I take her out so my wife can continue to sleep a little bit more and get some rest. And then that's the joy of being around a child is just like, that's why I got up early, I came here, I'm going back.
Yeah.
Today.
Yeah, no, a family is very important. So I'm glad that, you find that joy there. That's wonderful. And then if somebody has to reach out to you, how would they do that?
I'd say I'm Doug Evans on social media. I check my own messages. I send out my newsletter, to my audience, 2 or 3 times a week. So you can, put your name on the list at thesproutingcompany.com or thesproutbook.com.
All right. And we'll make sure that we'll be linking those links on the YouTube description below. So thanks everybody for tuning in, and thanks Doug for joining us for this wonderful episode. I definitely learned quite a lot. I'm going to be talking to my wife, and we're going to be buying some seeds as we're driving back and start sprouting.
Well, terrific. Well, thank you for having me. And, I think Art of Living is, teaching people the art of living. So I'm aligned with 100% of your values, and, so grateful that you're doing what you're doing.
Absolutely. Maybe we should think of ways to partner up and see how we can, promote each other's message more.
For sure.
Awesome. Well, thank you so much, Doug.
You're very welcome.
Wonderful talking to you.
Namaste.
Namaste. Hey, a quick pause. I want to share a resource I've personally trusted for years. And when it comes to living well, not just in moments of meditation or reflection, but in everyday life, what we put into our bodies matters deeply. And that is why I love Shri Shri Tattva. It's a brand rooted in authentic Ayurveda, from daily wellness supplements to natural personal care, all crafted with ancient wisdom and modern purity. No shortcuts, no hypes, just products that support real well-being from the inside out. For me, it's all about alignment between what I practice and what I teach and how I live. And Shri Shri Tattva helps me bring some of that care into my daily routine. You can explore their offerings at shrishrittattvausa.com. I highly recommend checking them out. The link is also in my description below. I want to share something I've been personally loving. Shankara's Ghee Sutra is one of those rare products where ancient wisdom meets modern skincare. It's crafted from ghee that's churned 10,000 times. Yes, 10,000. Blended with Ayurvedic botanicals like hibiscus, bamboo, and it penetrates deep, up to 7 layers, to nourish, hydrate, and bring your skin back to life. No harsh chemicals, no surface level fixes, just deep, authentic care from the inside out, like everything we talk about on this show. You can check it out at shankara.com, and trust me, your skin will thank you. The link is also in the description below.